All right, let's get right to it. Let's talk to Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP here in Nova Scotia. Claudia Chender, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, I want to talk about this ongoing CUPE strike, Local 5047 school support workers here in HRCE. And there were some talks, a couple of proposals put before the union or the local, and you were looking for more action, more movement on this before the weekend. What I'm reading in the story here, I saw this on the CBC website this morning, and something that they're talking about is changing what is called work status. So basically, I guess no more money. So to me, the way that I look at this is if you change work status, then potentially the workers could collect EI. Is that not just asking the federal or the EI system to subsidize a raise for these workers in a way?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I'm a little bit hesitant, Todd, to kind of get into any specifics. That was a leaked email, so hopefully there's more kind of fulsome and productive conversations going on. But certainly, what I can say is that many of the folks out on the picket lines, and again, they're educational program assistants who help students who need support in school, but also early childhood educators, African Nova Scotian support workers, Indigenous and Mi'kmaq support workers, the Schools Plus outreach folks who help kids who really need it. So a lot of different people involved in this, and a lot of them have second jobs because they make so little money. So we spoke to an early childhood educator on last week who said that after doing this job since 1984, she took home $29,000 a year gross. And that's not something, you can live on as a single income right now.
Yeah.
So, I think, is that a good deal? Certainly it's not what the union was asking for. But at the end of the day, the question really is the clock is ticking. It's June 12th. We're getting to the end of the school year, and we still have almost 4,000 kids who are prevented from going to school. And not only that, but, we're getting now 4 weeks into the situation where we have some serious impacts that are being felt by kids and families of this strike. 4 weeks without childcare for people whose kids would normally be in pre-primary, 4 weeks without support for the students who really need support, and there's concern about learning loss and deficits. And, there's real concerns about, do we really have an inclusive education system? If the government is willing to just sort of let this sit as long as it has, what does that mean for the value that we place on education for all students? So I think there's a really big concern, and I think right now the government has to find a way to enable these workers to pay their bills, really, plain and simple, so that they can get back to school, because that's where they want to be, and that's absolutely where the children and families of HRM need them to be.
All right. Also, reading in the stories that I'm referencing, the CBC story says government officials, including the Premier and Education Minister, have maintained that CUPE came to the bargaining table looking for wage parity across the province. They maintain the government gave it in the tentative agreement that was reached and recommended by all union locals. What's your response to that?
Well, I think that the collective bargaining process is like any other kind of representative democratic process where you sort of do your best and then you have to put it to the public. Or to your membership. So in this case, CUPE put an agreement to their membership that their membership elected not to ratify part of it, this local 5047, as you said. And that's not unprecedented, even in the last few years. The same thing happened when we had the huge disputes with the teachers union not that long ago. There were 3 tentative agreements that were recommended that the membership chose not to ratify. So this isn't an unusual thing. It happens. And I think, you had a situation where some of those other locals in the province have different classifications represented. So some tradespeople who might get a different pay scale, sort of outside of the conversation. And, all of those other unions benefited, all of those other locals benefited more than 5047 did from the recommended agreement. So, it's unfortunate that that's the way it went down. But at the end of the day, what we're hearing very clearly, I think, from these workers is we can't afford to pay our bills. And we need to see something less than just a constant reduction in real terms in this inflationary period of our wages. And that's what they're putting to government. And, CUPE can't fix that for them. The only people who can impact their wages and their wage pattern and their take-home pay is their employer and ultimately, the Houston government. And so this government is one that very strongly advocated for inclusive education, that very strongly advocated for education workers and teachers when they were in opposition. And, now they are faced with the consequences of, the kind of liberal austerity policies and attitude towards collective bargaining and organized labor. And this is a test for them. Do they genuinely believe that these workers are important? Do they believe that our students deserve to go to school and to be supported in education? Or, are they going to play chicken here and wait till the end of the year? And the big danger in that, Todd, is that all those folks are going to go find another job. Mm-hmm. And, in many cases, they can find a job that pays as much doing something very different. They can go and work at Costco, or they can, do any number of things that would be much less stressful and bringing them the same take-home pay. And then the government's going to be in real trouble in September. I spoke to a teacher yesterday, and he said, Claudia, if the public could see a day in the life of an educational program assistant and the work that they do, and then put that up against their pay, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The work these folks do is so vital and so difficult often. And, what they're asking is to be valued in a really basic way. And that's what their parents are asking for, too. I mean, I've been at rallies every week since the strike started, full of parents and teachers who are not on strike, but are, standing with them, who are saying this isn't right. We understand the value of these folks, and they need to be able, as I say, just to pay the bills. So.
All right, I get some emails in response from some people who say the reason that they're not paid as much as perhaps as it looks like they should be is because they're part-time workers. What do you say to that?
Well, it depends. As I said at the beginning, there's lots of different folks involved in this. Some are 80% or casual, and often that's not by choice. It's because they don't offer those full-time positions. So every year, Todd, I have so many families who approach me who say, I need full-time support for my student and I can't get it because there are such scarce resources. So I'm not sure what they mean by part-time.
Well, the hours that they work is what they mean. In that they're there for, they're not working a 35 or 40-hour work week.
I don't think that's true for the most part. So I think, teachers, education assistants, those folks, most of those folks are in the schools from, maybe 7:30 to 3 or 3:30, 5 days a week. They, when school is out, this is the EI conversation that you referenced. Yeah. Right now in HRM, those workers get what's called smoothing pay. So they get 10 months of pay over 12 months. So they're contemplating a change, but I don't think anyone would say that that's part-time work. I certainly wouldn't. As I say, there are some casual folks, and that's a different conversation about how their salary is reflected. But, for the most part, I would say these are just like teachers or anyone else in the school system. These are full-time workers. But again, the real question is, can they support themselves? Can they support our students? And can we get students back in school? I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of families who are now on week 4 of having to deal with childcare. And it's not like it was during COVID when they're allowed to work from home and everybody's in the same situation. It's very difficult. And you're soon going to look at families having to decide, does one parent have to stay home? Do they have to sacrifice income? we should not be putting families in that situation.
And like you said, if this drags on over the summer, I'm sure that they'll lose many workers. They'll just simply go to other jobs. I think that that's a foregone conclusion. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And they have a public pre-primary program to run. And this is at a time when probably almost every regulated childcare center in the province is hiring because we have a shortage of workers. And with the federal agreement supporting a reduced cost daycare, the wages are more competitive than they were when the public system opened. So, you're going to have a real labor force issue. And again, this is something the government could settle tomorrow. And, as we often talk about in these situations with government, they will often say our focus is healthcare. But we know how vitally important education is for health outcomes. It's one of the social determinants of health. And you have a lot of kids right now who are slipping through the cracks. And in June is when all of those thousands of pre-primary students, those teachers are talking to the primary teachers and saying, these are the children who are going to need support. These are the children who might have challenges. Tracking that, all of that is going to get lost if those workers aren't back this week. And, similarly, we are hearing lots of stories about kids who need support either because they're not neurotypical or because maybe they have challenges at home or in other places or they're experiencing trauma. And those kids aren't getting the support they need. And that's just really unconscionable, Todd. Like, why is my child allowed to be in school, but other children aren't? The government has the power to bring these kids back to school, and that's what we're really looking for them to do.
Okay, Claudia, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP.